For your examination, it is this Article 11 which is very important, because Article 11 gives unfractured power to the Parliament that you regulate all matters related to citizenship. And that is how this law was passed in the year 1955. And we will look at this law and we will try and understand who can become an Indian citizen, what are the ways of acquiring Indian citizenship, and how can one lose Indian citizenship as well. But first up, what are the ways of acquiring Indian citizenship? There are multiple ways. One, by birth, then by descent, then by registration, then by naturalization, then by the acquisition of a foreign territory. Let's look at all of them one by one. But first up, by birth. Who can become the citizen of India by birth? And this is where it becomes very interesting, because it keeps on changing. Till 1987, we had a different rule. Then 2003, we had a different rule. Then 2003 onwards, we have a different rule. But here we need to understand two concepts. Yas Soli, Yas Sanguini. Yas Soli means law of the soil. Yas Sanguini means law of the blood. Till the year 1987, we were following the concept of Yas Soli, which means the law of the soil. What does that mean? If you are born on the territory of India, you are a citizen of India, regardless of the fact whether your parents are citizens or not. So a child born on the soil of India, regardless of the nationality of his or her parents, this child is an Indian. Why? Because this child is the citizen of India by birth, because the child was born on the soil of India before 1987. 1987, the law changed again. Indian Citizenship Act was amended. After 1987, the law says a child born on the soil of India would become an Indian citizen if one of the parent is an Indian. That means now the condition is at least one parent has to be an Indian. If that is the case, this child born on the soil of India, if one of the parent is an Indian, this child is an Indian citizen by birth. 2003, the law was changed again. And because of this law, what now happened? A child born on the soil of India would become an Indian citizen if both parents are Indians, or if one of the parent is an Indian, or if one of the parent is an Indian and the other is not illegal migrant at the time of the birth. That means till 1987, what were we following? Yas Soli, law of the soil. The child born on the soil of India, regardless of the nationality of her parents, this child is an Indian. But after that, Yas Sanguini, law of the blood. The child born will become an Indian citizen if one of the parent is an Indian. 2003 onwards, this child born on the soil of India will become an Indian if one of the parent is an Indian and the other is not an illegal migrant at the time of the birth. But now the question is, who is this illegal migrant? Let me give you two examples. Number one, you are from Bangladesh, for example. You want to come to India for any reason. It can be diplomatic reason, business related. It can be because of health. Whatever the case may be, whatever the reason is, this individual from Bangladesh wants to come to India. What is the procedure? He has to apply for a visa. This legal document is given to this individual, and because of that, this individual comes to India. So this individual from Bangladesh comes to India on the basis of this valid legal document, which is a visa. So this person is coming to India legally. But now let's say this visa was valid for 6 months. And this individual is now overstaying. The visa was valid for 6 months. This individual is overstaying. He's staying more than 6 months in India. He is now an illegal migrant. And if he marries an Indian, a child is born. This child cannot become an Indian citizen, despite the fact that the child was born in India. The child was born on the soil of India because one of the parent is an illegal migrant at the time of the birth. There can be another definition of illegal migrant. For example, I am from Bangladesh. I am entering India not on the basis of this valid visa document, but I'm illegally sneaking into India without any travel documents, without any visa. I am an illegal migrant on the soil of India. And now if a child is born because I have married an Indian, this child, despite the fact that the child is born on the soil of India, cannot become an Indian citizen. Why? Because one of the parent is an illegal migrant at the time of the birth. So who can become an Indian citizen by birth? A child born on the soil of India becomes an Indian citizen if both the parents are Indians, the child is an Indian. One of the parent is an Indian, the child is an Indian. One of the parent is an Indian, but the other parent is an illegal migrant. This child cannot become the citizen of India by birth. That's criteria number 1, citizenship by birth. Criteria 2, by descent. A child is born, but not on the soil of India. The child is born outside the territory of India. For example, in United States. But the child is born in United States. Both the parents are Indians, or one of the parent is an Indian. This child can also become an Indian citizen, despite the fact that this child was not born on the soil of India. But this child was born to an Indian parent outside India. This child would also become Indian citizen by descent, provided the parents register the birth of this child at an Indian embassy in United States. But now comes something interesting. United States, what do they follow? Soli, law of the soil. That means regardless of the nationality of your parents, a child born on the soil of United States is a US citizen. Now picture this situation. Indian couple in United States. A child is born. This child is a US citizen. Why? Because they follow Soli, law of the soil. The child born on the soil of United States automatically becomes a US citizen. But this child is born to an Indian parent outside India. That means by descent, this child can become an Indian citizen as well. But India does not recognize dual citizenship. But United States does recognize dual citizenship. In this case, what will happen to this child who can be both the citizen of India as well as the United States? This is the only criteria. But then, once this child turns major, attains the age of 18, this child will now have to take a call. Whether I want to continue as the citizen of India or I want to give up the citizenship of India. And within 6 months of this individual turning 18, he or she will now have to take a call whether I want to continue as the citizen of United States or I want to continue as the citizen of India. But this is the only way, this is the only exception to our citizenship law. This child born outside the territory of India to an Indian parent till the age of 18 can have dual citizenship. I'll give you one hilarious example. There was a lady, she was almost 9 months pregnant. She was traveling from Hong Kong to United States. Although you're not allowed to board the flight if you are 9 months pregnant, but somehow she boarded the flight and she was all set to fly to United States. While in the flight, she started entering into labor. There were people trying to help her deliver the child, but she was reluctant. She asked, "Have we entered the US airspace?" Other passengers said, "No, not yet." She said, "I don't need your help now. Come to me and tell me when we have entered the US airspace," because this lady wanted her child to become a US citizen. Why? Because United States, the law there says, Soli. If you are born on the soil of United States, which includes the airspace of US as well, if you're born on the soil of United States, regardless of your parents' nationality, you are the citizen of United States. Then as soon as the plane entered the US airspace, the child was born, delivery happened, and this child became the US citizen. What happened to the mother? She was deported. What happened later on? That is none of our business. That's not required for the civil services examination. But the concept is, Soli, Sanguini. So one way of acquiring Indian citizenship is by birth. Another way of acquiring Indian citizenship is by descent. Third way of acquiring Indian citizenship by registration. And let me give you one simple example. There are different cases, different conditions under registration. I'll give you just one example. I'll give you more examples later. For example, Sonia Gandhi. She was not born in India. She was not born to an Indian parent outside India, but she married an Indian, Rajiv Gandhi, who later on became the Prime Minister of India as well. Can Sonia Gandhi become the citizen of India despite the fact that she is not born in India? Or she is not born to an Indian parent outside India? Yes. By what? By registration. You come to India, marry an Indian. If you're staying in India for 7 years, then you can apply for Indian citizenship. Under what category? By registration. I'll give you more examples, but slightly later. So third way of acquiring Indian citizenship is by registration. Fourth way, by naturalization. Let's say, for example, I am not born in India. I am not born to an Indian parent outside India. I'm not even married to an Indian, but I still want to become an Indian citizen. I love this country and I want to become the citizen of this country. Do I have an alternative? Do I have a choice? Do I have a way out? Yes. And what is that? By naturalization. And what is this naturalization? For example, Mother Teresa became an Indian citizen through naturalization. For example, Adnan Sami, the celebrated artist, was not born in India, was not born to an Indian parent outside India. In fact, his father was a Pakistani Air Force pilot who participated in the 1965 war between India and Pakistan. He was not, in fact, married to an Indian either, but even then, he became the citizen of India by naturalization. But for that, strict conditions have to be met. Condition number one, you have to give up your previous citizenship. For example, if you are a citizen of United States and you want to become an Indian citizen through naturalization, you will have to give up your US citizenship. Condition number one. Condition number two, you have to also make your intention clear that I want to acquire Indian citizenship, but at the same time, I want to make this country my permanent home. That means I want to make India my permanent home. That is why I need Indian citizenship through naturalization. Condition number three, I should be well versed in any Indian language mentioned under Schedule 8 of the Constitution. Schedule 8, which we will discuss later, talks about 22 Indian languages recognized under Schedule 8 of the Constitution. If you want to become an Indian citizen through naturalization, there is one condition that you will have to meet. And that condition is you have to be well versed in any of the language mentioned under Schedule 8 of the Constitution. Number of years of your stay in India. This is something very interesting. 14 years in India. You do not come under the category of citizenship by birth, citizenship by descent, citizenship by registration. Even then, you want to become an Indian citizen. For that, you have to stay in India for 14 years. But when we look at this 14-year period, we take into account 11 years. That means out of these 14 years, for 11 years, cumulatively, you should have stayed in India. Which means 14 years, that does not mean I should have never left this country in all these 14 years. No. You can leave this country as well. You can go on a pilgrimage. You can go on festivals. You can go outside India as well. But over a period of 14 years, out of these 14 years that you have been residing in India, when we calculate the number of years you have never left this country, that number should come 11. That means for 14 years, ordinarily, you were residing in India. And now you are making an application for naturalization. The government will look into the number of days you were in India, the number of days you never left this country, and add these dates. And if you were residing in India for 11 of these years, you are eligible to become an Indian citizen by naturalization. So number one, you can become an Indian citizen by birth, by descent, by registration, by naturalization, and condition number 5. by incorporating a foreign territory. Let's assume for a while that we acquire Pakistan, or we acquire Sri Lanka, or we acquire China. The citizens of China, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, can they become Indian citizens? Yes. Why? Because we have now incorporated their territory. For example, Puducherry. Puducherry was not originally part of India. It was acquired by India from France. So when it was acquired by India from France, then the government said, the citizens of Puducherry will also become Indian citizens. But there is one important statement here, which can be relevant for your examination. Let's say, for example, we acquire Pakistan. Happy? Now, does that mean even the Hafiz Saeed can become an Indian citizen? Or Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, can also become Indian citizen? There is a choice that the government of India has. Here is the power available with the government. Some can be excluded from becoming the citizens of India despite the fact that that country, that territory, was acquired by the government of India. These are the 5 ways by which one can acquire the citizenship of India. Now let us look at the ways by which one can lose this citizenship. 1, by renunciation. 2, by termination. 3, by deprivation. First up, renunciation. Now what is renunciation? It's a voluntary act. Voluntarily, somebody may give up the Indian citizenship. And that is what exactly happens. Hundreds and thousands of people every year, they move to the greener pastures of New Zealand, Australia, United States, Germany, and they give up their Indian citizenship. So renunciation is a voluntary act by which an Indian citizen can voluntarily give up their Indian citizenship. But one interesting thing here, which might be relevant for your prelims examination, there is a couple who have voluntarily given up their Indian citizenship. What will happen to the minor kids of this couple? They would also lose their citizenship. But once this child attains the age of 18, now this child will have the opportunity of becoming the Indian citizen again. That means at the age of 18, this child who was a minor, when the parents renounced their Indian citizenship, this child can now become an Indian citizen again once the child attains the age of 18. So renunciation is a voluntary act by which an Indian citizen gives up voluntarily the Indian citizenship. That's number 1. Number 2, by termination. And termination is done by the government. The government terminates your Indian citizenship. Why? You are an Indian. But now you move to Germany, for example. And in Germany, you have acquired the citizenship of Germany. But the government of India knows that you have acquired the citizenship of Germany, and at the same time, you have not renounced your Indian citizenship, which means you are holding 2 citizenship at the same time, which is not allowed. And that is why the government can terminate your Indian citizenship. And who is responsible for all of this? MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, which is the nodal agency for all citizenship matters. MHA can terminate your Indian citizenship if you have acquired the citizenship of a foreign country. And now we have a third kind, deprivation. And deprivation is done by law. For example, you can be deprived of your Indian citizenship if you are disloyal to the Constitution. If you are disloyal to the Constitution, you can be deprived of your citizenship. That's number 1. Number 2, we have looked at ways of acquiring Indian citizenship by registration, by naturalization. But here you have to meet certain conditions. For example, you should have stayed in India for 11 years if you want to acquire Indian citizenship by naturalization. If you are married to an Indian, you have to stay in India for 7 years. Then you can apply for Indian citizenship through registration. What if you are acquiring Indian citizenship but through fraud, through concealment of facts? You have concealed the facts surrounding your stay in India, and that is how you have acquired Indian citizenship. If you have done that, your citizenship can be deprived from you. That means deprivation is done by the law. If you are disloyal to the Constitution, if you have acquired Indian citizenship through registration or naturalization, but through fraud, through concealment of facts. Also, if you are out of country for 7 years continuously, you can be deprived of your citizenship. But this does not apply if you are a student of a foreign university. If you are a student of a foreign university, you stay out of this country for 7 years, your citizenship will not be deprived. But someone else who has stayed outside India for 7 years continuously, citizenship can be deprived. So if there are 5 ways of acquiring Indian citizenship, by birth, by descent, by registration, by naturalization, by incorporation of a foreign territory, there are 3 ways of losing your citizenship. By renunciation, which is voluntary, by termination, which is done by the government, by deprivation, if you have acquired citizenship through fraud.